Hello, it's Kathleen at Level Up Your English with Kathleen Elise, and welcome to today's episode. This is the second time that I'm going live today talking about this topic. So I'm trying to go, when I come live, I'm going live at midnight and at noon because I know many of you are in different parts of the world, and I'm trying to get this as close to the middle of your day or on some end of your work day where it's not interfering. So if you want to check out the earlier video, please do, because I'm sure there's going to be plenty of stuff that I talked about there that the examples may be different here. So plus it's live, so my train of thought goes in different places. So check it out, and it may or may not be finished processing yet. I'm not sure. They've been taking a while, so but you should be able to check it out. But please do. So anyway, don't forget to like the video and also subscribe, get your notifications so that you'll know when I'm going live. I'm going to try to keep these to a half an hour because, again, actually under half an hour, because I know if you're coming on lunch, you don't want to hear someone talking all the way through lunch. You just want some time to breathe, especially if you've had a busy work day or if things are difficult. So we have enough stuff going on. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to talk about quickly. So today, I can't think of it. So here we go. Oh, just quick. Yeah, so this will be every Monday, at least through December, at midnight and noon. I might switch the midnight one to midnight Monday going into Tuesday versus Sunday going into Monday, but I'll give you plenty of notice for that. So today we're talking about, I'm trying to bring to your attention some things that most language learners don't consider, they don't think about when it comes to things that affect their pronunciation. And so I see students struggle with these a lot, and so I want to help take some of that struggle away for you, or give you something to really think about. If you're struggling, it might not always be you. You might, we always tend to think, I'm such a failure, I can't get this done, I can't figure this out. Why can't I do this? Well, it might not be your fault. It might not have anything to do with your intellect or anything like that. Let's check these things out. So the first thing that is probably in your way, and I say this a lot because it's generally the major issue, is that you're not using English mouth mechanics. You're trying to pronounce English sounds using the techniques that you would use to pronounce the sounds of your language, your native language. And as I'm learning through my studies of Korean, the Korean approach to making sounds, we have different sounds. There are some that are similar, but they're not the same. And so if I always find that I have trouble pronouncing my Korean when I think with my English sound producing mindset. So, excuse me. So really make sure that you're thinking in the mindset of English so that you will think, okay, to produce this English sound, I have to do this with my mouth and my tongue and my jaw and whatever it happens to be. So, and just an example of that is that I have one student, I think I've spoken about him before, and he's been learning or speaking with other English speakers. His native tongue is Spanish, and so he's used to rolling his R's. Excuse me. So when he sees the letter R, or or goes to say an English word with the letter R, he rolls his R's. So like the word great, Great, I'm so great, he says, I am so great. And if he has several sounds that have the R in it, in his sentences or in what he's reading, it he gets all tripped up on it, and he gets frustrated because he says, I can't speak English. Why can't I speak English? And I try to help him to understand it's not that you can't speak English, because he speaks it and understands it very well. And he has a tremendous comprehension of more advanced language concepts than he realizes. It's just that he's hurting himself when it comes to pronouncing it and producing the sounds. So make sure that you are thinking it in English. How do I produce English sounds with my mouth? Okay, so that's a big thing. And also the other issue that's tied in with this is that many people believe that speaking fluently in any language at all means to speak it quickly. And the faster I speak, the more fluent I am. Well, that's that's a myth. That's not true. Look at how I speak. I'm thoughtful when I speak. I'm constantly reaching into my brain to find the right words, to make sure I'm pronouncing them correctly, to make sure I've put them together in a way that's going to communicate my message clearly. That's the goal of fluency. The goal of fluency is to communicate your message, your feelings, your information, whatever it is that's in your brain, to get it across to someone who speaks that language clearly, not to speak it quickly. Because oftentimes, I mean, how many times in your own language, you might be used to speaking quickly, but if someone speaks faster than you, then sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, what did you say? I missed that. So it's not about speed, it's about accuracy within the context. So, and again, when I talk about accuracy, it doesn't mean having all the technical things. It doesn't mean pronouncing every single syllable distinctly and etc. You want to speak in a fluid fashion. Sometimes you might need to be less formal than other times and more relaxed and easygoing, and it's okay to combine your sounds. But as long as you know what the right one should be, because this actually leads into another issue, as long as you know how to do it right, fundamentally, then you can take that information and you can work with it. It can be like Play-Doh, or clay that you can mold and shift and shape to fit the needs of the conversation. Okay, so really think about that. And I spend a lot of time on it, and I will continue to spend a lot of time on it because it's critical. The second thing, I just want to make sure. Oh yeah, something that came up. This is not in the other live stream. So again, make sure if you attended one, make sure you watch them both, or try to come live. The other thing that came up is that many times people learning a language, particularly English, they don't finish out their words. They drop the endings, what have you. So some of them, I wrote some down. So that the transition from one word to the next gets blurred, and it's hard to figure out what you're really saying. The first one I had down here was so a lot of times you'll see in, like for celebrities or, just in chats or on any kind of video, YouTube video, TikTok, whatever, you'll hear people say, "Oh, I love you," but they won't say you won't hear the V. Instead of love, 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 love you, you'll hear love you, love you. Well, to an English ear, that doesn't mean anything. It's just a sound. So make sure, even if you just glance over the sound, make sure you finish it. It doesn't have to take any more time. It doesn't take any extra time to say love you, because you're still combining the sound love you, view. It's almost like love you, love you, than it does to say love you. One is clear, the other's not. So that's a critical thing. Make sure you're finishing your sounds, even if you're combining them and condensing them. It's okay just to make sure that that condensation is clear. I think so. And I hear the word condensation, I think of, water on the windows, but you're condensing it. The act of condensing is condensation. So make sure even those transitions are clear, regardless of how correctly you're pronouncing. It's a matter of producing the sound and the equivalent of the sound so that the ear and the brain hear the sound, whether you're actually, full on saying it. So there we go. The second one is that many students, I find, they have issues with the physiology of their mouth. So by that, I mean, dental issues, issues with your teeth, issues with your jaw. So some of my students have an overbite, which means that the top teeth project out further. They're not in alignment. So their top jaw projects out further than the lower jaw. I mean, your teeth are going to have a little bit of an overlap, and that's normal. But sometimes this is pronounced, and the same thing happens with so this is called an overbite. This is called an underbite, where your lower jaw projects out further beyond your upper jaw. And so I don't have an overbite, so I can't give you the example of that, but I can intimate what an underbite will do for you. So the underbite, you can see here, this is normal. The underbite is like this. This is very exaggerated, but even if it's a little bit, even if the underbite is where it puts your teeth flat together, even, it creates a problem because you're now the shape of the cavity in there is different, so the sound reverberates, etc. But it also makes it difficult for you to produce the sound properly. It's very hard for me to do without exaggerating it. So I'm going to exaggerate it. So if I'm talking like this and my jaw's like this, it clenches my teeth because it's hard to open my jaw any wider the way it needs to be. It needs to be really flexible. But if I have an underbite, that restricts the flexibility there, and it puts my tongue in a different position. So these are not insurmountable problems. This is not a major issue because not everybody can afford to have their teeth fixed, and or it just might not be possible to have that jaw fixed, or any of the issues fixed. So we just need to know that that's what you're dealing with, so we can then, excuse me. Oh, I'm so sorry. You just need to know that you're dealing with that issue. So now we know now we know what we're working with, and we can then address it and help you work around it and work with it. Okay, excuse me. Once that happens, it's hard to get rid of it. Sorry. So that's just something that might be there for you. And again, if it is, and you're able to do something about it, great. And if you're not, it's still fine. We can still work together and help you to fix that, help you to work with it. So, but again, that takes such a, a weight off of you to know that it's not that you're stupid. You're not stupid. You know what you're doing. You know what to do. Your body's just making it hard for you to do, but it can be done. So we'll deal with that. And then a third thing that you might be dealing with, which I deal with a lot, is allergies or sinus issues. So because English is not a language that has nasal sounds, whereas other languages do. Um, there are some languages that the sounds are made all in the nasal cavity, and others that, like English, that rarely do. But because I have allergies, I have many different kinds of allergies, my sinuses are always clogged and blocked. So it changes the sounds that I make, and it gives me a nasally sound to my voice. um, but again, it doesn't mean that I'm producing the sounds incorrectly. It's just going to change the quality of the sound, I guess, when it comes out. So you could be dealing with sinus issues, which will change certain uh, sounds in English for you. So again, it's not a critical issue. It doesn't mean you won't be able to communicate in English. It just is something, oh, okay, so that's an issue. Either like me, it will be a constant issue and you just have to learn to work with it, or it'll go away when your cold is finished, or when, the pollen is no longer in the air. So it's just something to think about. And then a fourth thing, and I have a few sub issues on this one. A fourth thing is that you may have learned the pronunciation of a certain word or words from someone who is saying it wrong and pronouncing it wrong. So, my real life example is that when I first started to learn Spanish, my Spanish teacher was a native of French speaking Canada. So she had a heavy accent in English anyway. And so she was teaching us how to, but so she actually was a native French speaker who had a heavy French accent in English, teaching us Spanish. So all of those things compounded, and we learned Spanish incorrectly. We couldn't pronounce it properly, even though we had the technical, the grammar, and we were proficient in the grammar, and we knew the vocabulary, we knew what we were supposed to do to say it, but we had just been mimicking the wrong sound because she had several layers of pronunciation issues that, you know, were passed on to us. And so I've always had difficulty reproducing the sounds of Spanish. So, and then there was another example too. There's a movie, Jodie Foster was in it. I think she produced it and everything, called Nell, and it's about a it's based on, language study, and it's the story of this girl who was raised in the deep woods down south, one of the southern states in the United States. And the grandmother was elderly and she died, but the little girl, so this was the granddaughter, she was, and played by Jodie Foster, she was very young when the grandmother died. And so she was kind of living on her own, but the grandmother had set up grocery deliveries and all that stuff. And so some language, I forget what they were. I forget what part of language studies they were, what their field was, but I think they were studying different dialects, and they stumbled upon this girl. And the girl, she was born in the United States of America, born in whatever state that was. So she was a U.S. citizen. She was a native English speaker, but because her grandmother, number one, had a heavy Southern accent, which even, I have a hard time understanding people with a heavy Southern accent, and I'm pretty good at understanding many accents, but there are some that I don't. And so she had a heavy Southern accent, but she had also had a stroke before this little girl was born. So she couldn't, her whole side of her face was, she had no control over. So this little girl is learning English with this intense accent, but also she's being shown how to form them incorrectly because she doesn't have someone who can do it properly through no fault of her own. It was a stroke. It was a medical issue. So again, really think about where your source of learning is coming from. Make sure, and it's fine to learn from many different people who speak different dialects, and there's all sorts of regional differences, because that's part of becoming fluent too. But just understand that you need to get many different sources when it comes to learning your pronunciation, just to make sure that you're learning it correctly. I oftentimes will use my dictionary, and as we'll find out in the previous live that I did today, my dictionary doesn't have all of the explanations of some of these words. It will tell you the word, but it doesn't show you how to pronounce all of them. So I was very disappointed, because this has been with me forever. But anyway, so get a good source of, and YouTube has tons of people approaching the pronunciation of English in so many different ways. So you're always going to find multiple sources. They're out there. Just make sure that you go do that, so that you know that your sources are correct, and that you get a correct an overall view of how to pronounce words properly. The sounds, it's really the sounds that you're looking at, because speaking, you're not speaking letters, you're speaking sounds. The letters represent the sounds, and that's where we get into writing English. But the speaking is all about reproducing sounds, and I think that will help you too. When it comes to the first one about making sure that you're thinking in the mindset, think about speaking English as reproducing the sounds of English. So forget about your sounds. Forget about associating a sound with a letter, because as you'll find out in English, there are so many different combinations. Focus on the sounds, and you'll help yourself considerably. And then let's just see. Oh yeah, I'm trying to keep this within our time frame here. The other issue with learning it improperly is some people, again, they grew up hearing a word pronounced incorrectly all the time. So, I have friends who, instead of pronouncing the word ask, instead of pronouncing it as ask, they pronounce it as ax. Oh, I have to ask that person about the letter they sent me. I have to ax. So they've just heard it wrong all their lives. So they don't know they're pronouncing it wrong. So again, just make sure. And then, yeah, this is the next one, the final one is just, I have such a cute story from when I was little. The final one is that you probably misunderstood what you're hearing. And so therefore you're associating one word. You think that you're that this pronunciation is for this certain word, but it's really for something else just because you misunderstood it. So for me, my example is that when I was 6, I was learning how to cook. And I got my mother let me make the pudding for that night. It was a little box of pudding that you just put the powder in and you add the milk. And the instructions said to stir constantly. So I learned what the word constantly was. I learned what it meant. And so I did a great job and made awesome pudding. And then I don't know why it was so many years later, but when I was 8, I was learning how to bake. And the instructions said to stir occasionally. So I was so excited about being 8, and I think I don't know what I was making, but I was so excited to be doing this, and I just wanted to get on and see the finished product that I didn't take the time to really look at the word. I did a lot of assuming about what it was and how to say it. So I knew that what I was doing was supposed to I didn't need to be constantly stirring, just every now and then I was supposed to be stirring whatever this sauce was or whatever. But in my brain, when I looked at the word, I knew that it was, in my mind, the opposite of constantly. So in my brain, I saw the O. I looked at the first letter, saw O, associated that with the word opposite of constantly. So instead of reading occasionally and sounding it out and looking at it and whatever, I thought the word was oh constantly. So every time I saw the word occasionally spelled out, I was always saying oh constantly. And my mother overheard me reading the directions. I read them out loud one day. And she says, oh, constantly, Kathleen, what are you reading? So we got that straightened out. But because it was so ingrained in me for a little while, and it's such a funny memory to me, I still sometimes have trouble with that word. So pay attention, slow yourself down, take the time to get it right. And if you get it right in your foundations, then it's going to make you the rest of it so much easier. It's like, taking all the time to build a template or something, of something that you're going to have to do all the time. If you build a good template, then it's everything else is going to be easy. You're going to spend a lot of time building that template up front, but it's going to save you so much time and your life is going to be so much easier later on. So take the time, slow yourself down, and just enjoy the process. Stop putting so much pressure on yourself. I think that's really it. Yeah, so next week we're going to be talking about, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So if you have questions, put them in the comments and let me know. And I'm happy to answer them. I will take care of them, somehow we'll make sure that they're answered for you. So next week we'll be doing this live, same time, noon. And I think I have next week scheduled for midnight on Sunday going into Monday. So, but I'm probably going to be changing that. But anyway, we'll be talking about laying the groundwork for your correct pronunciation. So just to set you up right from the beginning. Okay. So I'm super glad that you could come here today. I'm really glad to see everybody. And, again, subscribe. Let me know how you liked it. Put it in the comments. Click the little thumbs up and set the notifications. So, because there'll be other times I might not plan to go live because you know me, sometimes I just have to say something. So anyway, great to see you today and enjoy your week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.